Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Awaken to Your Soul Path. I am your host, Barbara, and I am joined by your other host, Robyn. And we were having such an amazing discussion about sensitivity and narcissism and empathy and all the likes that we thought we need to record this for an episode. So, what we were talking about was that not that long ago, I was in a discussion on Facebook where someone had asked the question: are all parents of highly sensitive people narcissists? Because a lot of highly sensitive people or empathic people complain that their parents are narcissists. And she wanted to discuss if there was a correlation between that. And I answered her that there are true narcissists and there are people who are stuck in mostly caring for themselves as a survival way and exuding behavior or showing behavior that could be labeled as narcissistic. And that woman went nuts on me. I said to her that narcissism and empathy are two sides of the same coin, and that normally when we are in our right energy and we're feeling awesome and we're flowing with life, then we are very empathic. But the highly sensitive people that haven't learned everything about themselves yet and that are mainly stuck in unhappiness, loneliness, unworthiness, and people pleasing can, and especially when they're being or have been traumatized by abuse or stuff like that, they can go into survival mode where they can really only think about themselves, and even that's too much. And I see that with my mom, for instance. She is highly sensitive, but you could say other things, and we are so quick to label, and then we call our parents narcissistic while they are just very unhappy, very hurt, highly sensitive people, because high sensitivity is hereditary.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Barbara, because if I look at my own parents, there was a time where I thought, yeah, they had narcissistic tendencies, but they both had very traumatic childhoods. They both had a father who was an alcoholic, and they didn't have a good childhood. The things they told me, they were both in survival mode. They found each other because their pain bodies attracted each other, and they clung to each other. And us kids we were never a part of their life, which
Mhm.
was really weird. I mean, how do you have these five children and you don't include them in your life? But we very much were not a part of my mom and dad's reality. We were just, I'm going to call it an afterthought. We always had a roof over our head. We always had food on the table, but we didn't get any positive feedback. We didn't get any encouragement. The only time my parents paid attention to us was to discipline us or to tell us how disappointed they were in us. There was no positive feedback.
Mhm.
And my parents never fought in front of us, so I never learned how to work through problems or issues. So if I had an issue with somebody, I didn't know how to deal with it because I'd never witnessed it. And I would just walk away.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know how to fight back, you know.
Yes, I completely relate to that. Like my mom, and it goes even further than that, because I know that my mom's mom, my grandmother, and also my mom's dad, my grandfather, but even also on the side of my dad's dad, my dad's mom's been dead for a long time, but all my grandparents have had extremely traumatic, difficult childhoods with a tyrant and a sociopath on one side, with a rapist on the other side, with not mattering as a woman on that side as well. And our parents, they grew up in a house where they had certain examples, and there were certain rules, and there were certain traumas that happened to our parents, and they then sort of pass it on to us. And if I look at my mom, for instance, when I found out I'm a highly sensitive person and I went and I told her, her response was, yes, child, I know I am one too, but it's not something to be proud of. And I was shocked. I thought, why is that not something to be proud of? And that was something my grandmother taught my mother, to be just like everybody else, because my grandmother had always been very different and had a very difficult life. And my grandmother genuinely believed that if my mother was exactly like everybody else, that my mother would have a better childhood. But the traumas of my grandmother and the traumas of my grandfather affected my mother in such a way that my mother completely closed herself off to her emotions. My mom is incapable of saying I love you to me, for instance.
Yeah, my parents didn't say I love you either. I I think it wasn't till in their 80s that my dad came up to me one time and hugged me, and said I love you. And I'm like, wow. When my brother was dying, he was incapable of telling my brother he loved him or was proud of him or anything. My father could not express his emotions. And we all just stood there. My brother's dying. He just wants to hear, I love you. I'm proud of you. And my father could not do it.
Yes, exactly. I've been in that situation with my mom, and that she finally started crying and say, I want to be able to say it to you, but I just can't. And then I saw my mother's pain for the first time, that she was struggling with that. And that's because of the way she was raised. And my dad started abusing me when I was 7, and that continued until he died when I was 21. But my grandfather was also very strict to my father, but my grandfather's father was a tyrant that bullied and hit and mistreated his children for fun, for sport. So we are all affected and influenced by our ancestral baggage, by our ancestral karma. And if you do not learn how to handle that very well, what you said about our parents not being there, my mom worked 2 jobs, my dad was always out of a job, my father was the abusive one, my mother was almost never there because she worked 2 jobs, and when she was there for my brother, but not for me. She literally told me, yeah, but you were such an easy child, I didn't have to take care of you. So that also didn't happen. And that scarred me. And all of these behaviors come from other places. And again, we are so quick to judge. We are so quick to label, in especially our Western society. And it needs to be called abuse or ADHD or being autistic or being a narcissist. We love labeling people and we love putting people in boxes, but there are narcissistic tendencies and narcissistic behaviors that can be part of a person who is not a narcissist. And you have true narcissists, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have the pathological narcissist that it's just that's their soul path this lifetime, is to experience being a narcissist. And that is one of the things that, as a healer and a teacher and a mentor, we really have to come to understand that we're all here on a different soul path. And if we're here experiencing being a narcissist, well, that's our soul path. Now, no, we don't have to make excuses for them. And I don't like to make excuses for people, because they still have freedom of choice. They don't have to do that. They don't have to follow that pattern. They have an opportunity to change, and they're given many opportunities to change. And if they want to take them, they will. But part of our ego has to have some narcissism in them, because we are about survival, our body's survival. When we're sick, we go into survival mode. I know that when I was so sick, all I could do was lay on the couch and drink water and just try to survive. I couldn't do a meditation. I couldn't do anything, because my body and my ego were in, you have only X amount of energy and you need it to help your body survive.
Yes, and I know exactly what you mean. It's hard sometimes to navigate things, and I've been angry for a large part of my life, mainly focused on my dad, because I thought, if I can change, if I can work on myself, if I can make different choices, if I can heal, why couldn't you? Why didn't you take one of the chances that was offered to you? Why didn't you ever try to be different, try to be better, try to heal? And it wasn't until I was doing a family constellation somewhere and I was chosen to play the role of the father of the girl that the family constellation was about, that I sort of felt channeled through me the message, because I wasn't as strong as you, because I wasn't as strong as you, and I just couldn't do it. And well, my first response honestly was, well, that sucks. Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's true. It does kind of suck, but I have to say that I worked with a healer and we cleared up, the mother-daughter thing, and we cleared up a bunch of stuff. And I worked on that probably for 3 or 4 years, the masculine and the feminine. We did both sides of the family. And my parents did change in their 80s. They have shifted in their 80s. They're more tolerant, they're more loving, they're more kind, they're compassionate. They've forgotten why they didn't like their children or their children weren't good enough for them. They've forgotten those things. And they're a much better grandparents and great grandparents. So my parents had an opportunity to change, because if we do the work, if we work with us, that specific healer that's going to help us fix the genetic lines, we can shift the whole family.
Yes, I completely agree. I've also done a lot of work on both the male and the female sides, on both sides of my parents, because on both sides there's stuff to be done. And I am also in large part doing it for my nephew. Because if I can clear as much family karma as possible, he will have a better life or different opportunities. And I also don't want it to continue. I don't want it to be handed down and handed down and handed down. I want, as much as I can stop, to stop with me, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, because, like we had a mother-daughter curse. There was always, and a father-son. There was always one son that was picked on, one daughter that was picked on. I was the one that was picked on, and my brother that died was the one that was picked on.
Mm.
And it was just generational on both sides of the family. And you don't want that to continue. You don't want to have that struggle or that jealousy or whatever it is going on. And like right now, I know, my granddaughter's been confiding some things in me. And, it was hard to hear what she was saying, and because I was like, I can't believe this is happening. This is, but then I had to explain to her about the stepmother that was in her mother's life. And the stepmother was very narcissistic, very controlling, very manipulative. And so I was able to give her some understanding of why her mother's behavior was the way it was. And it's really sad because, from the age of, 0 to 8, the person who's in our life the most, in the strongest influence, is what you try to emulate. And that stepmother was the one that my daughter chose to try to emulate. And I, of course, I didn't understand it, because I was a very sensitive person, very emotional, very kind, considerate, would never be mean to somebody. It was like, but I did change later on. When I did get into my 40s, I became very reactional. Like, I just reacted to everything and reacted in however I felt I wanted to do it. Because I had held myself back for so long from ever expressing or being mad or, doing what I wanted to do, that it was such a nice release just to, if somebody pissed me off, I tell them they pissed me off right when they told me, like, just, I would explode. And I went through that for a couple of years before I got that under control.
I completely recognize that, and I see that. I've experienced that, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I also see it a lot with the people that I'm fortunate enough to be able to guide. I think I've often compared myself to a doormat. Everybody could just walk all over me. And I would stay kind and gentle and soft. And even last year with the ex coming back and him abusing me, I still stayed kind, gentle and soft. But that was more of a choice. Before it was not a choice. It was just who I naturally am. And then there comes this point where you just the scale tips the other way. And I think we need that. We need to have both the side where everybody and everything can always walk all over us, and then the side where we say nothing can walk over me again, and I'm giving feedback and pushing back, and I'm not letting them steal the cheese off my bread, so to say, in anything anymore, in order to eventually find the center where we have healthy boundaries, where we stand up for ourselves and our rights, but in a good way, no longer in an aggressive way. We don't allow people to walk all over us, but we remind them of that fact with love.
Yeah, it is, because like when somebody confides in you and it's a family member and you're like, and that you can't approach the person they're confiding in you about. I had to process this for about 2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
what can I do? Like, how can I help her without interfering? Like, right, because this is their family dynamic, and if you go and interfere in a family dynamic, you just cause all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So in my meditation last night, I was brought this up with my spirit guides, and it was like, okay, what are we going to do here? And they just showed me that we could clear the energy, that all I needed to do was clear the energy, clear the information, send unconditional love, really work on the patterns and belief systems, because they're not my pattern and belief systems. They were my daughter's based on her childhood that this stepmother showed her. And, for some reason, she attributed this stepmother's behavior as power.
Mm-hmm.
She was powerful. And if you have these personality traits, you're powerful. But my daughter in reality doesn't have those personality traits. So she's pretending.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of accepting who she is, because she's a highly sensitive person too, like she's extremely sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't like being sensitive. She doesn't like being empathic. She doesn't like being emotional. So she tries to emulate these narcissistic patterns so that she doesn't have to feel her feelings.
This is one of the main reasons why I don't believe in fake it till you make it, because your daughter is trying to fake a personality in hopes of making it, in hopes of being successful in a way that she saw someone being successful in a way that she wanted to. But it's making her miserable. I saw that up close with my ex. He had this thing with his brother, where his brother was mean and unloved and had very little friends, and he was even voted out of the office by all of his co-workers. They wanted the boss to fire him, and still he felt that his brother was the epitome of success, this thing to emulate your life and everything too. But he was not that type of person, and when I see him now, he is not happy, but he is living a very similar life to his brother, pretending to be happy, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, it's hard because it's that the grass is always greener on the other side. What somebody has, there's always a better house, a better husband, there's better children. There's, like, I need to be a better person. I have a hard time explaining to people that your job is what you do to pay for your house and your food and your clothing. Your job is not meant to make you happy. Like, you can be happy in your job, you can find it self-fulfilling, but the happiness is within yourself. If you don't like yourself, if you don't like who you are, if you don't accept who you are, if you don't love yourself, nothing's going to make you happy. That next boyfriend's not going to make you happy. That better girlfriend's not going to make you happy. That other job isn't going to make you happy. You need to be happy within yourself. You need to like who you are. You need to look in the mirror and say, I love you. You're amazing. You're fantastic.
Yes.
and be that way. Like, I don't go to work to find my happiness. I go to work because I have to have money, because that's the way the world works.
Yes. And I had to have money to do other things that do make me extremely happy, for instance. And that's indeed what I was also going towards. It all comes down to self-love, to loving yourself enough. And you need to be the one that values yourself. You need to be the one that loves yourself unconditionally, no matter what you do. And it's sometimes something that you need to learn. It's something that I needed to learn. I remember very well the first time someone gave me the exercise of looking yourself in the eye, really looking, and then saying, I love you, while staring yourself in the eyes. I couldn't get it out the first couple of times I tried. And the first time it actually came out, I broke down and I cried. It was an extremely emotional moment for me, because I had never learned to love myself, because my mom does not love herself. My dad never loved himself. He's been dead for more than 20 years, but he never loved himself. They also never learned how to love themselves. So how could they teach me how to love myself? But that's what it's about, loving yourself and creating happiness within yourself. And then a partner or a job can only be a nice addition to that happiness that genuinely needs to come from the inside, not the outside.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, when I tell people I've been single since 2008 and I'm happy, they just can't imagine it, because they all feel like they need that second person. They need, and you've got people who are looking for their twin souls, and they're out there looking for their soulmate, and they're searching and searching. Well, if you go inwards, you will find that happiness you've been looking for on the outside. And I agree. When I first started doing that exercise, I couldn't get it out. And then I bawled like a baby when I finally got it out. It was so emotional. It was so hard to tell myself I loved myself. And it's weird, because you don't even realize you don't know, because you've never been shown love. I was never shown love. I was only ever shown disappointment. Do what I say. We just knew that if my dad lost his temper, you better go hide.
But
Like,
yeah, I'm the same. Yeah.
yeah, you had to behave. You had to be seen and not heard.
Yes.
And if you got really good at being seen and not heard, then you got the Christmas gift you wanted.
Yes, exactly. It's you needed to learn to fend for yourself, and that did not include love. I remember that the first time I needed to draw my childhood, I took a black crayon and I kept circling, and it was the entire A4 paper. It just one big black circle, and then you needed to name your drawing. And for me, it was the big black hole of gaping despair, and that basically sums up my childhood. And I'm now able to tell this and to talk about this without crying, but it took me a long time before I could say things like this without crying, because it was really a gaping black hole deep in me, of despair, of loneliness, of hurt, of pain, because I was alone most of the time, while I did not want to be. And now, like you, I've been single for a long time, and I am loving my life. I love what I do every day. I love the things that I'm able to do for myself. I treat myself really well. I go to the sauna, I take massages, I have wonderful friends like Robynn, and I'm doing work that I love, but it's all in addition on top of the love that I already feel for myself. And I think you can only draw in more of what you love if you come from a place of love, because that is what the law of attraction is about, right? Like attracts like. So you need to love yourself first to attract people who love you too.
Well, and that's so true, because once I learned to love myself, I was able to heal the relationship with my children. I was able to heal the relationship with my family and my parents, my siblings. Like, when I haven't talked to my siblings in years, and yet when I ended up in the hospital and had to have this major surgery, all of a sudden my siblings were coming around and checking on me and asking if I was okay. It brought the family, you know, like my siblings and my parents have been incredibly supportive. You know, they've put me in their prayer circle, things that they would not have done for me before.
Hmm.
And it was because this whole thing that I've gone through was learning about surrender, accepting the fact that my soul wanted to go through this experience for whatever reason, and to just surrender and always trust, like I knew I would come out the other end okay, and trust that everything was going to turn out all right.
Hmm.
Um, it is about trusting and loving yourself enough and trusting your intuition,
Yes.
because boy, let me tell you, I could have gone down the rabbit hole. I could have gone into victimization. I could have panicked. There's so many things I could have done. Um, you know, but it was about just surrendering and trusting that my soul knew what it was doing and that I would be okay when at the other end of this.
Exactly. And on top of that, it's also staying true to yourself. Because at the moment, my mom and me are not having a relationship, and it's mostly my mom's choice. And I have a choice. I can respond from a place of hurt because the things that she's doing and saying is hurtful. But I can also choose to stay true to myself. And it's my mom's 70th birthday next week. I am going to still send her a postcard with a kind message on it because she's my mom and I love her and I'm staying true to myself. And I'm choosing to not have hurt respond with hurt. I'm choosing to keep on coming from a position of love when it comes to my mom. And that's also something that I see a lot of people forgetting. It's so easy when people hurt us to just hurt back, to respond from hurt. And it's a lot more difficult to sort of let it roll off your back and stay within love, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like you can choose to overreact when somebody tells you something, or you can choose to think about it like I did for 2 weeks and just take in everything. And then instead of, which was something I did in my 30s and 40s, I just reacted and went in like a bulldozer, you know, like, um, but instead, I went to my spirit guides and I went to my soul and said, how are we going to handle this? And then, you know, they told me the advice you gave your granddaughter was perfect. Listening to your granddaughter was wonderful. Telling her about her mother's childhood, you know, helped her understand her mom a little bit better. And now you can choose to release the programs and patterns. But my daughter has to choose to want to change. I
Yes.
can't make her change. I can do the work. I can do the spiritual work. And when she gets the opportunity, which her spirit, her soul will show her those opportunities, if she takes them, then she can change her life. But it's still freedom of choice.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you're sharing this, Robin, because I'm finally getting out of that phase where I just responded immediately and going to that place where you take more time to think about it and then choose how you want to respond, which for me is a huge change, a huge step up. And it feels a lot better because that's one of the things I think that I discovered last year is that I was very reactive to the environment. And I let other people outside of myself have way too much control over my inner self and how I was feeling. And because of that, the way I was responding. And by not allowing that anymore, by taking self ownership of my feelings and my thoughts and how I want to feel and how I want to respond and what I actually want to say instead of just responding and saying without thinking, it's been a massive positive shift in my life for which I'm very grateful.
Yes. And that just comes with maturity. It's normal. Like it's normal to be, when you get into your 40s, to be a reactive person and start standing up for yourself. We have these patterns, and those of us that were told to keep quiet as a child. It took us a long time to learn how to speak up. It took us a long time to learn how to say, no, I'm not going to tolerate that. I was raised where the man was the head of the household and you didn't say no to men. It took me a long time to learn that I could say no to men. I could say, like I could take my power back. And I started taking my power back in my 30s and 40s. And then in my 50s, I started to mellow out again. And now in my 60s, I'm really introspective. It's like you think more, you feel more, you understand that you can't change anybody. You can, if they ask, you can give advice, but they have to ask. You can't. Telling somebody makes no difference whatsoever. You can hand people things on a silver platter, but if they don't ask, they're not going to take that silver platter.
No, and what I've experienced is then often they resent you or blame you for holding up the mirror when they're probably not ready for looking into it or something. So indeed, I've also learned that you cannot control what other people say, what other people do, how they are. The only thing you can control is how you respond to it, how you feel about it, and how you let it affect you.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's like, okay, this has happened. How am I going to respond to this? Like I was in such a bad mood the other day going back to work. And before I walked into that building, because I have this part-time job and I really do love it, but sometimes, your coworkers can irritate the hell out of you. I asked Spirit, I said, you know what? I don't want this attitude. I don't want to go in feeling like this. I want you to remove this negative energy because I don't believe it's mine. Like you have 100 customers walking through the door. You're picking up everybody else's energies. I didn't believe this was my energy. Well, by the time I walked through that door, I was perfectly happy and had a great afternoon.
Good. And that's, what it's about. It's about getting to know yourself so well that you can think and feel to yourself, this is not my energy. And then knowing what to do to get rid of it again so that your normal, positive, happy energy can bubble up and you can have a great day despite how you were feeling a couple of minutes ago.
And it's just that quick. And people don't realize it is really just that quick. You just choose to change the attitude. And I like asking for help. And we're supposed to ask for help. Ask for help from your spirit guides, from the angels, from God, whoever, Buddha, whoever you believe in. Ask for help. Like Ganesh, I asked, like Archangel Uriel is the same as Ganesh. They remove obstacles. So I connected with Archangel Uriel and said, please get rid of these obstacles for me. Whatever this is, just get rid of it. And he did, or she did, he did. But, like if you ask, you will receive, but you need to believe that you're going to receive it too.
Yeah, and know about the options, because most of this I never learned when I was younger. I only learned it later on in life and how to work with it. So if you're watching or listening to us talk about this topic and you maybe have questions or you run into things that you don't know how to solve or you don't know how to ask or whom to ask about things that we've been discussing, then please do not hesitate to reach out to either me or Robynn. We both offer free virtual coffee chats. And we would love to connect with you and talk about these things, because we both believe it's extremely important that we learn how to self-love and how to self-manage so that we can live our best life.
So true. Absolutely.
It's been absolutely amazing, Robynn, talking with you about this topic. I think we hit some amazing points. We are now joined by my wonderful kitty, who is also highly sensitive and often comes and shares in the energy between people who are amazing and wonderful. So this is Lotje, for those who are watching. And yeah, if you have questions or want us to talk about a certain topic, also let us know. But for today, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. And we hope to see you again in our next Awaken to Your Soul Path.
Bye.